you're not white. You're obviously brown, Punjabi. Was that a limiting factor, or was that something that aided you?
Break out of that like that stereotype of always being like, oh, she's just there with a bunch of guys, or she must be this girl, or and stuff like that. And actually, like, that's really harmful, and that's really like a very narrow-minded, misogynistic like approach to these things, because I take these things very seriously. It's my job. It's like the culture and the industry that I work in. I'm not groupie. Me and my parents went out for dinner, and my mum was like just shocked, and she was like, look how thin the waitress is, like as if it was a compliment.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Smosa Chats. Today's guest is Amrit Matharu. How are you, Amrit?
Hey, I'm good, thanks. Pretty. How are you?
Yeah, kicking in there. So BBC producer, broadcaster and model. Is that a fair summary of the type of stuff that you do?
Yeah, I think so. I always get really like shy and like, oh my God, that's what I do when I hear that, because sometimes it's a little bit like, it's a lot. I have to remind myself that actually this is what I do. This is my job. This is where I've got.
I always start the episodes in the same way, and I do always think that I hate describing myself. Like every time I do a show, I'm like, yo, can you just introduce me?
I wouldn't say I cringe, but it's like, I think it's a little bit of that thing where we're conditioned to always like put ourselves down a little bit, or not get gassed for our own achievements, like, but yeah, that's me.
That is you. So with your career, so how did you get started? What was the first like sort of creative interest, I guess, you had even before the career? What was the first like your sort of interest early on?
I think when you say the word creative, I always just think back to my childhood and really loving art and reading and all of those things. So I wasn't really like into PlayStation games or things like that. And I grew up with my sister, so often we would, and where we lived, we didn't really have like friends around in our area to like just go and play out or knock on someone's door, because I lived in an area where there was a lot of old people. So we'd have to make up our own kind of games and stuff, or like our own entertainment. And I think we were just both quite creative. So that's where I guess my creativity sparked, and then as I grew older, it was like more into fashion and reading. And obviously then I went away to university and studied English, and then I eventually like published my dissertation and it became a book and things like that. So that's where kind of all of that sparked. And I think when you like pack it all together, that's what some of the reasons why I am creative is those triggers.
Yeah. With regards to like your career and stuff, I guess, where would you say what was your first like quote unquote big break?
I think it has to be working at the BBC. Like way before I did join the BBC, I used to work in sort of publishing, so with magazines and newspapers and all of that stuff. I got through internships and work experience, because it's a very hard career, I will not lie to you, to get into. To suddenly it become your paid job, it is really hard. And I found it particularly hard because I was the first child of my immediate family to go to university. No one studied English. No one wanted this kind of career. Most, like, my dad has his own business. My mum has worked in finance for a lot of her life. All of that stuff just seems like normal jobs to me, but to everyone they all mean different things, right? And I just knew that's not a job that I wanted. My dad used to tell me to do law because I was good at English. Had a very good command of English, and I was like, what am I going to do with law? I don't personally think I'm very argumentative and I can do all of that stuff. I was like, no, I thought I wanted to be a teacher because I was so into English at school. Like that's where a lot of my inspiration came from. I thought I'll just go and be a teacher. And at uni, that all changed. I always had this like passion for fashion. Hate that term, but it's something. I was very expressive in what I wore and how I dressed, and still am. And I thought, oh, I could combine kind of that like element of like what I enjoy with my like my skills of English and become like a fashion journalist. And I thought journalism was my route, but I didn't know how to become a journalist. Despite even going to uni, no one told me how that happens. So I kind of like foraged that career myself in a sense, where I went off after university and started working in publishing, or tried to at least. And everyone was telling me, oh, like, you know, publishing is so done with now. We're coming into like the new age, and that's when blogging and stuff had started, and everyone kept telling me to go and work in broadcast and TV, and I just thought that was way too much of a serious jump. I was like, oh, I can't do that. I didn't even know what that was. And then I got a job in radio somehow, and I didn't even know how I got that, because I just started a YouTube channel and I was doing like vlogs and my own sort of stuff and blogging, and I was so naive and thought that I could write a letter to the BBC, my local BBC, and, oh, can you give me a job? And the lady who was in charge of all of that stuff in the building got given my CV and was like, well, obviously that's not how it works, because you have to apply for jobs. And she just invited me in, and she said that was a really brave thing for you to do. And I kind of got put on her radar in that sense. And she just kind of explained to me, like, this is how it works, and da da da. And she was like, why don't you go off? And she was like, you can work in radio, like, you've got a great like personality for it. And I was like, what? Real people can do that? I thought you had to already be famous, or you had to like have, you know, like privileged families and stuff that get you just into it. And I just did not know like how that would happen. And she kind of taught me the basics of radio, and I went off to volunteer in radio at my local stations. And through that, I just kind of was in the right circles, saw like different job advertisements go up, etc., etc. And there we are. I applied for, it was actually an internship that I did with the BBC through a program called Creative Access. If anyone listens to this podcast and wants to get involved in anything media related, check out Creative Access, just Google it. And there's loads of different jobs that come up on there, and they're all like paid internships. And this was my first ever paid like learning job, if you like. And I was with the BBC for a year. And then that kind of equips you with the skills to be able to apply for jobs at the BBC and be in with a shot. And that's where it all started.
So with how long ago was that?
Nearly 5 years ago, coming on 6.
5. Oh, so that's like a good time. So you've kind of seen like the fruits of like your labor, I guess. It's almost like a little investment, these like small time internships and like sort of the vlogs and stuff. So you invested smart into yourself. But I'm sure that it wasn't quite as smooth as journey as you painted then. I'm sure you faced some challenges.
Yeah. And I always used to think like my position, like in terms of who I am and where I've come from, didn't help me. That was a limiting factor I would put on myself. Like, I used to think not being from London or a big city and having like, I don't know, being well known, or like some people just through nepotism or whatever, because you've got a famous dad or someone who's well known in the industry, and you've almost got some leverage to be given a platform. And I didn't have any of that. I had to really work for everything that I've done. And I used to just think all of those things would stop me, but don't. If you're listening to this podcast and you live in a little bender somewhere like I did in Little Northampton, or just in general, like you just feel like you feel small, you feel like you've got this idea or this dream, or you want to do something and you can't, don't let that be a factor. Believe in yourself that you can do it. Sometimes it can be about networking and understanding like who to turn to and where to get advice. But we're so lucky that we have the internet now. A lot of my connections have come from me having an online platform to talk to people and create these discussions. A podcast like this, I'm sure you've met so many people just through doing this and contacting them and communicating with them. I think we have to look at our these opportunities as like privileges and not something that puts us down.
With speaking about privileges and things that put you down and things like that. So obviously, I mean, it won't be a shock with a name like Amrit Matharu, right? You're not white. you're obviously brown, Punjabi. Was that a limiting factor, or was that something that aided you?
Yeah, I used to think that I didn't stand a chance or anything, or simply even when you're writing cover letters or your CV or something, you think, oh, someone's going to see that name and not take you seriously. That was something that I thought about myself, because I grew up in Northampton, which is a very white town, and I just I kind of used to think that I couldn't do it because all the other people got the jobs before me and things like that. But I also knew at the same time, so when I applied for my internship and worked with the BBC, it was with the Asian Network. I have an interest in radio, media, all of that stuff, and it doesn't have to be Asian just because I am. And a lot of people used to think that, oh, you know, you've got your job in an Asian sector, now go somewhere better. That hurts me sometimes, because I genuinely love our Asian culture, that pop Asian culture, where, you know, I'm so excited about the next artist that's coming, or whether it's fashion or whether it's film, TV, that kind of stuff. Like, that's a big interest of mine, and I enjoy it and I love it, and I'm really happy to work where I work and proud. So that used to make me feel quite limited in terms of other people's reaction to that. But I'm good at my job. I meet brown people that don't know any of that stuff, and I do. So it's like, there's a reason I work in the field that I work in.
With your sort of race and gender, I guess, and this is something that's quite topical at the moment. This should go out tomorrow, so like, with obviously like women's rights and stuff like at the forefront of news. Particularly, my interest has always been like with so that was going to sound so weird. I was going to say my interest has been with brown women. No, like with sort of the challenges and stuff that brown women face, and like brown and black women face, I guess. They will kind of fly under the radar sometimes. Did you face anything that was specific to those two identifiers?
I think being a brown woman working in sort of like the entertainment industry and things like that, you can often be overlooked and thought, like, you know, when you're perhaps at a music gig or something like that, like, my position there might be working, you know, like I might go to gigs for my own enjoyment, but then when I'm working at them and stuff like that, naturally you see people that you know, or people from the industry and stuff, and it is quite a male dominated industry. Sometimes you can be thought of as like, you know, the girl that always hangs around, or like a bit of a groupie, or this, that, and the other. And actually, like, it's quite hard to sometimes break out of that like that stereotype of always being like, oh, she's just there with a bunch of guys, or she must be this type of this girl, or and stuff like that. And actually, like, that's really harmful, and that's really like a very narrow-minded, misogynistic like approach to these things, because I take these things very seriously. It's my job. It's like the culture and the industry that I work in. I'm not groupie. Like, I have like credibility and a right to be there just as much as any guy would.
Yeah, I could. So yeah, I think that's some stuff that I think I've heard as well. With not about you, that would be fucked up. Imagine that. Imagine that'd be so fucked up. Like, yeah, I've heard that about you as well. No. I mean, as in that stereotype and that trope being really prevalent, even in something as microcosmic as like the bhangra industry, for example.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why it's so hard, and so that's why we don't see so many, like, you know, brown women making music successfully, because they just get tarnished with this label, and it's just generally quite hard to power through when you have like all these strong males, you know, churning out music, and as a female, you're constantly being compared to or like pushed down because of that.
How do we go about like changing that? Because I think, because we're obviously such a smaller community, like brown people in general, I feel like things that we do on an individual basis can actually have like a big impact. Is there anything we can do? And then secondly, what is it?
I think like, I mean, there's loads that we can do, but I think firstly, one of the biggest things that we're seeing change in is 2020 changed so much for us and how we think in terms of social movements and just the way we interact as humans in general. And so much has been happening. Like this podcast is coming out very recently, so all the stuff with like Sarah Everard and things like that that's happened recently in the media and the news, and with it being so close to like International Women's Week and Mother's Day, all of that stuff, I think it's just put people in a position to understand what's actually happening. These things shouldn't have to happen for us to understand, but unfortunately it has. And I think that it just means that we're waking up to it. Just as we knew about Black Lives Matter, it wasn't just a sudden movement that had happened. Something major happened for us to all wake up to it. And I think that's something with the Sarah Everard case and all the other things that are going on, and the media is putting a highlight on, that we all just need to wake up and understand this is happening and change our attitudes. What's happened has happened, and unfortunately we can't change those things, but going forward we can change our attitudes.
Yeah, I think that's a very important message, because like this will come out tomorrow. So the Sarah Everard stuff, I think obviously what happened was horrible and it was disgusting and all of that, but I think society really unveiled itself with the not all men stuff like that. I like, don't get me wrong, like I love, like sometimes I love being a contrarian, like thinking from the flip side and stuff, but I could not fathom, like it just didn't make sense in my brain. And even like I'm fortunate enough that I know a lot, especially in the comedy world, like I know like a lot of women who are very vocal about women's rights and issues and stuff, and in their messages they tweet something in support of it, and the first thing that somebody would think is like the male perspective and shit. And I was just like, as a dude, I was just kind of there, I was just like, yo bro, shh, this isn't our one, like just listen bro.
Yeah, and I think that's a really sensible attitude to take to it, in terms of it's understanding the sensitivity and all of the stuff that comes with it. So yeah, more power to you and understanding.
Thank you, Amrit. I mean, that's what it really is. I was just fishing for compliments. I know I'm such a feminist, like,
but I can understand, like, you know, with it just takes things like that for you to set an example. Like, and I always think with things like this, yesterday I was posting stuff around Mother's Day, and I posted a picture of my niece, and I said, strong women, may we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. And it's the same for men. Like, may you be a strong man, but also a feminist man, and know them, be them, and raise them.
Bruv, it's one of those things where I think people either, and I'm a big believer in this, I think people are stupid. Like, I think a lot of people are stupid where they see something, read it, and they're like, well, they include everybody, so that means they're excluding everybody else. So this is what I've got to speak up on it. I've got to speak up on it to my 200 followers. Or like, or it's the other way where they intentionally like feel threatened. And I think this is probably the more prevalent one, actually. I think people feel threatened by movements where minorities, whether that's Black Lives Matter, feminism, whatever it is, rising because it challenges the status quo and threatens their privileged position. And like, even as a brown dude, I could, you know, I'm quite a large brown dude. I can't relate to some of the issues that women were saying, but then, like, you know, being scared in the evenings or hearing somebody behind her. Now I walk around with headphones in and shit. So like, my time wasn't to start tweeting and shit then. My time was to just shut up, read, take into like consideration another person's point of view, you know. But like I said, I'm such a feminist. I'm very, feminism is my thing. But moving on, so you've got all of the media side of stuff as well, but you're a model too. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that all kind of, again, just happened. And I think a lot of the things that have just happened is because I have a platform, and I use that platform hopefully for some good. And I used to just get, like, obviously being on Instagram and being into fashion and stuff, I would stunt for the gram, post a pic, you know, and I'd get a lot of comments from women and things, and saying like, oh, I love your style, I love your confidence, I love this, oh, I could never wear that and stuff. And I'm like, why could you not? And I remember like being at a wedding, and somebody came up to me and just said, you're so confident. I think I must have been like in the corner taking a picture or something, or doing a boomerang twirl, you know, one of those things. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I just thought that's just normal for me. Like, I just go about and do what I do because I want to do it. And then it dawned upon me that I thought that maybe women just don't have, like, people just don't have that confidence. And I was like, but I don't question my confidence. And I don't quite know where that's come from. I never always used to be so confident. But I think I just got tired of I don't need a validation for someone to say you're confident. Like, that's lovely if you say it, thank you very much, but I don't need it. Like, I just want to be it, and you shouldn't have to rely on someone to make you feel a certain way. You are given your body, you are given you and your personality, that's no one else's. So then I just kind of, that's just kind of how I am. That's how I've always been. And I got involved with a competition and became a face of Yours, which is a clothing brand, and took part in so many of their campaigns. And it's been really weird to get messages of people saying I was in the shop and I could see your like face on the billboard and things like that. And that was a really weird feeling, but also a really important one. I felt like, we talk about plus size a lot. We hear about it a lot. Often, well, the whole body positivity movement started with Black women, but you see a lot of these words in Black and white spaces. We don't really hear it being spoken about in the brown community. So I feel really proud to be a face and someone, when a lot of like girls from Instagram or something might hear my name or hear Amaretto's World, they will associate me with that and a bit of positivity, and I hope that I can give that to people and make them feel that, because that's your right. You should be able to feel those things about yourself.
With so you mentioned there that those views don't really, or that movement didn't exist in brown circles. What are the stereotypical beauty standards in the Asian community? Do you like how I asked that? Like, I don't know. It was unprofessional, very professional.
I don't know. I just feel like, I spoke about this in a podcast recently, actually, like when we look at pop culture, where we hear R&B and hip hop music where they're talking about the thick thighs and a curvy woman and her arse and things like that. In a way, okay, you could look at it like, is it being misogynistic and looking at women in that way? But at the same time, they're also celebrating it in some form, right? And when we hear sort of our Punjabi music, I can only speak about Punjabi music because that's my love, but we hear about the batalalak and the, things like that, which I think can be quite damaging. So when I used to hear music like that, and my sister won't mind me saying this, but when we'd be at a party and Luck 28 would come on, she would just go sit down. She would be like, I don't like this song. It would feel hurtful to her. Like, why do we have to sing a song about someone who's Luck is 28?
I'm not just saying this, right? So at Bongo nights and stuff, whenever I was there, I despise that song. I didn't listen to a Diljit track until Back to Basics because of that song. I could not deal with it.
Chocolate? Don't you have a chocolate?
Oh, bollocks to chocolate. That was not good enough to overturn. That was not good enough to overturn what fucking Diljit did with that track. To this day, I don't care what Yo Yo Honey Singh does. I ain't fucking with it at all. Diljit only brought it back with Back to Basics. And that album to me was basically an apology. But I used to do the same thing. I don't dance. When that track is on, I go sit down and I'm like, I despise it. Because you're right. Have you seen that meme where they like Luck 28, Weight 47 or whatever it was? And it was the little creature thing from Men in Black.
No.
Oh, bro, I'll send it to you because it's so true. Who the fuck knows a girl that weighs 47 kilograms? What, like, Diljit, what, you like after a child, a prepubescent kid? Is that what you want?
Yeah, and then I just think things like that we're not helping ourselves, and it makes this whole idea of the beauty standards of a woman being thin, petite, having a 28-inch waist and all of that stuff. I just think it's just not right. And I think it makes you grow up thinking that you need to be that. And don't even get me started on colorism, where, you think you have to be fair and light skin. Like, I would get told off for going on holiday and coming out with a tan. Like, I went out there to get this tan. Like, can't you see?
Yeah.
Go on.
Bro, colorism is another thing. I don't want to make this fucking recording about me, but these are some issues that I fucking hate. I used to partake in it when we were kids. My brother's slightly darker skin, right? When we were kids, we would mention it to him, not think anything of it, and then we got a little bit older and we were like, oh, whoa, what the fuck were we doing? And then, like, I think it becomes problematic when we don't question ourselves and like don't think about where those things have rooted, because you went from like words like sandal or like gundalma like Sarid and all that are like associated with more curves and curvaceous, to Butterlaw and like all of this like shit.
Yeah, I think now, obviously, we have like our generation of people who are talking about things like this on podcasts, on social media platforms, and calling out and challenging it. And it's not because we're trying to be like problematic and troublesome. I think it's because we're of a generation where we're able to see and educate ourselves and what these like social changes mean. Because like, as much as it was a problem from like our parents and other generations, it's because they also didn't know, they didn't have that understanding, because they didn't challenge it like how we do, because it's that whole thing about, oh, it's just what you do, it's just what it is, you know. But I think now we're able to be a bit more woke. I hate using that word, but it's so true, because we are just like, we just know a lot more, and we're able to do something about it because we have like things like social media and things, we have like an apparatus to be able to put those changes in place or make people understand, whereas before it would be just like, I think, a lot harder because people didn't have these avenues.
Oh, 100%. And I think there's also just, even in general, I think we're almost taking a Western approach to dissecting stuff, whether it's religion, whether it's culture. Like there was a big conversation on Twitter recently about like using casteism in Punjabi songs and stuff. And like, I boycott Bollywood like anything. But when Put the Jaktane comes on, I'm like fucking, fucking Raji Baji and all of that. So it's like, you question yourself and you're like, actually, yeah, that is kind of fucked up, isn't it? It's all about supremacy and things like that. But going back to like your personal experiences and stuff, was there a lot of sort of like anti-body positivity, I guess, like when you from the community and also just from wider society?
Yeah, I think a lot of it can start at home. So like still to this day, I will call my mum out on things that she doesn't realise that she's saying. So I remember quite clearly in the lockdown when good old Boris had introduced Eat Out to Help Out. Me and my parents went out for dinner, and my mum was like just shocked, and she was like, look how thin the waitress is, like as if it was a compliment. And I just was like, mum, that's not like complimenting her by saying that she's thin and she's skinny. I was like, those words can be just as harmful to someone else if they heard them, because you don't know someone's like journey about their weight or about their body. And she was like, oh, shut up. She just was like, just be quiet. But I call her out on it, because if someone carries on thinking that way, and it's so hard to change people's minds and opinions, but I think through saying it to her, and my sister says things to her, I think she's able to understand like where we come from. So I remember growing up, and I love dressing up, and I love like putting my makeup on and choosing an outfit and all of that stuff. That's personally something I love doing. But as my sister was growing up, going to a wedding, going to a function, she would absolutely hate it, because she would feel like the clothes didn't fit her, or and then be compared to me or compared to our other cousins who, everyone can just buy an outfit off the rack. And I still can't just do that. Like I would need to go see a tailor or need to choose something appropriate. And that's probably why my style is a little bit different, because I make things work for myself. But yeah, it can be like those little experiences can build up this whole traumatic thing of your body image, and with things like, especially to our culture, like, with Western clothes, it can be a lot easier because you can just go to the shop and get what you want, not always, but it's a bit more accessible than it would be to buy like desi clothes. So that's kind of some of the things that I've troubled with.
I think it's an important conversation. I think it goes across genders, and I think it doesn't just go like, I think from a male point of view, I don't think it's just a issue within our community, like the sort of body image of like the dude. Like I grew up with like WWE wrestlers and shit. I started weightlifting when I was 14 because I wanted to look like The Rock. And then like there was a period, Amrit, right? There was a period in my life where for 6 months, every lunch and dinner was some weird combination of either chicken, beef, rice, and sweet potatoes, right? And I look back on it now because I'm a little bit happy with how I look, and like, I'm not so obsessed with, oh, bro, yeah, my calves ain't working, bro. Like, what the hell, bro? Like, why ain't they growing? Like, girls won't find me attractive, bro, if I don't have big calves, yeah? And it's like, you kind of get to a point where you kind of question, like, you're like, oh, bro, like, you just got to be fucking happy. If you want that slice of pizza, you got to have that slice of pizza and not like worry about it.
Yeah, like what you just said there about like girls not finding you attractive and things like that, and that's something that I particularly was told a lot of, and probably other brown girls listening to this are always like, marriage is always a big topic that gets spoken of, you know, like you've got, like, I remember being at a function, again, it's always a function, there's always some auntie, there's always someone saying something, and there was this particular auntie who went up to my mum and said, "Is that your daughter?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's my oldest." And she was like, "Oh, she's so pretty, but if she lost a bit of weight, she'd be even prettier. You know, she'd be able to get married." And my mum was like, "Thanks." Kind of like, it's a very awkward situation. What do you say? And then my mum told me afterwards when we got home, and I was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" I was like, I would have marched up to that auntie and really just told her. And I remember my friend's grandma even saying to me, she was like, you know, just, you have to lose a bit of weight first. And I was like, well, thanks, Bibi, but like I didn't ask for your like unsolicited advice. Like, did you know that I'm quite happy in my body? Like, I love myself, and that's, I think that's the most important message. You should love yourself before you allow anyone else to like love you too, because you shouldn't ask for validation from anybody else about yourself. I think that's so important.
100%. And even if you were to lose a few pounds, the last reason you would do it is to impress her cokehead son. Like, leave it alone, GT auntie, all right? Nobody's trying to marry your fucking like, oh, bro, yeah, fucking. I hate that vibe, and I think it permeates. And I think we talk a lot about the older generation, but I think it permeates through our generation as well. And I think it is something that you consciously have to change, because otherwise you just start replicating the same generational trauma, innit? Which is bollocks.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I just think like the thing that you said as well about being happy with yourself, I think that's what you need to understand as well, because the way you look is always going to change. Like, we're not always going to stay youthful. We're going to get wrinkles, you know. Our arms are not always going to stay perfectly toned. That's going to like suddenly decease at some point. Like, nothing's permanent. So I think we need to remember that. But the thing that you can be in control of is your mind, your personality, the way you think, the way you are. And that was something that I didn't have like a click moment, but it took me a long time. But I do remember thinking about this a lot when I was sort of growing up, and when as you grow older, you know, you form your thoughts more. And I just remember thinking that it doesn't matter how someone looks. Someone could be fat, thin, or, you know, spotty, anything, but actually the way they are as people, the way they act towards you, how kind they are and things like that, that's because of them, not because of the way they look. And that's probably one of the most important messages that's ever stayed with me in my head. And I'm so glad that I think that way, because I think that's what makes me have this confidence or have this strength to be who I am, because I don't put that down on what I'm wearing. Like, I did have to pause this the recording of this podcast 5 minutes before because I wasn't ready, and I was like, hang on, let me just sort myself out. But I think if I had to, like, if you didn't give me that time and said, no, we're recording now, I would have just come on here with the top knot and been like, yeah, let's go. But I think, yeah, it's just, it creates like it's like your core strength just becomes that, and not like fickle, and, you know, it doesn't become damaging because of what you look like. I think that's really important.
Oh, 100%. I always think, like, I came across this quote, so I can't take a credit for it, but I can't remember who said it or where I saw it. And it was something along the lines of, like, our like roles as people is to facilitate the growth of another person. And now it could be a case of, like, you know, somebody wants to lose weight or they want to like improve that, and fine, support that, facilitate it. But it's like that sort of viewpoint shouldn't come from you. You shouldn't project your viewpoint onto somebody else. And I think the world would be a better place if people just thought about that before they said it. The fucking GT auntie with a cokehead son. Like, think about it, bro. Bro. Come on. Yeah, this has been a fucking enlightening chat. I always enjoy getting into the bigger topics. Projects wise, is there anything that you've got coming out that people can check?
Well, no, to be honest with you.
Fuck, I've put you on the spot.
No, definitely not. I think we as people always constantly are looking for the next best thing. You know, what are we doing? And I think COVID has taught, certainly me, and I don't know about anyone else, but it's taught me to kind of really pause. I am a busybody. I get anxious thinking about why I haven't finished something or what I'm going to do next. Like constantly thinking about that. I really am. But actually, I think COVID has made me realize how to press pause, why it's so important, you know, and work on the thing. The thing right now is me, my family, and kind of where I am in life at the moment. So I'm not striving for the next kind of modeling gig because it's COVID and I ain't gone anywhere, or it's not work because I'm working from home and I'm okay with not the next bit of like being in the limelight or something like this. Like I actually am enjoying working on whatever comes my way, crafting it and learning to be happy. You know, I think that's an important message that I think a lot of all of this pandemic business has taught us, because we can't control some things, but we can control what we got. And right now, what I got is myself and my family. So
that is some beautiful message to end the podcast on. I think that is so altruistic. You don't want to plug anything, but I am going to plug your socials. So you can catch Amrit on Amreto's World. I think it's the same across all of the platforms, isn't it?
Yeah, everywhere is Amrito's World. And you know, whilst I'm not got any projects going on or anything like that, I do constantly try and talk about very real shit happening on Instagram and on my socials. And if you just want to follow some good content and nothing that's damaging or harmful or going to make you get anxiety on your profiles, follow me.
Yeah, you can follow Amrit for that. And if you want anxiety and shit, come over to my profile. So
your stuff will make people laugh. It's not bad.
Oh, I don't know. The last thing, I don't know. Let's not get into that. Okay, right. So, Amrit, thank you so much for coming on. I've had a pleasure. This was an amazing chat. Amreto's World, and thank you again for coming on.